All right, so today we're heading north,
For Winterfell.
yeah, to Winterfell to spend some time with House Stark.
The Starks.
I always loved the Starks. I
Yeah.
think a lot of people did.
Right.
And one of the things that always struck me about them was this balance they seem to have between humanity
Mm.
and nature.
Mm.
And I think we'll see a lot of that as we get into this.
Absolutely.
So, um, as always, we've got a lot of great material to dig through. We've got excerpts from Game of Thrones, A Dance with Dragons, A Storm of Swords, The World of Ice and Fire, even some stuff from Fire and Blood.
Wow.
So we're going to be covering a lot of ground, and hopefully finding some new insights into these fascinating characters. Whether you're a hardcore fan or just getting into the world of Westeros, I
Right.
think there's something about the Starks that just grabs you.
Right.
I'm curious, like what is it about the Starks that you find most intriguing?
Well, for me, it's always been how they're shaped by the North.
Right.
That unforgiving landscape, the ancient magic, it just permeates their beliefs, their customs, even their personalities.
Yeah, it's like it's in their blood.
Exactly.
And I think we see that most clearly with their connection to the direwolves.
Oh, absolutely. Those direwolves are so much more than just pets.
Right.
They're like extensions of the Starks themselves.
Yeah. And in the north, the old gods are really important, right?
Yes, very different from the faith of the Seven that you see in the South.
Right.
The weirwood trees with their white bark and blood-red leaves.
Spooky.
Yeah, they're sacred symbols of this ancient faith, and the direwolves are really linked to this primal, nature-based belief system.
It's funny you mentioned the weirwoods, those carved faces. They're kind of creepy, aren't they?
Oh, they are?
It's like the forest itself is watching you.
It is.
But it makes me think about Bran Stark.
Oh, Bran.
He's like the embodiment of this connection between the Starks and the old gods, right?
Wow.
And his abilities as a warg and as a green seer really showcased just how deep that magic runs in their bloodline.
Yeah.
I mean, for those who might not remember, a warg can enter the mind of an animal.
Usually a wolf.
Right, usually a wolf, and experience the world through its senses.
Right.
But a green seer is something else entirely.
A green seer can perceive past, present, and future events.
Through the Weirwood network.
Exactly. They're connected to this vast network of knowledge, and they can tap into it.
So Bran's connection to the Weirwoods allows him to, experience the world through Summer's eyes.
Yes, his direwolf summer. It's
Right,
like a
right.
window into this otherworldly realm.
It's incredible.
And it's not just Bran. Each Stark child receives a direwolf pup.
They do.
They're huge, intelligent, fiercely loyal.
Almost like extensions of the Starks themselves.
Exactly.
It's like a pact forged in the heart of winter.
Mm.
A reflection of that delicate balance that the Starks are always striving to maintain between humanity and nature.
It's a beautiful thing, isn't it?
It is. And of course, you can't talk about direwolves without mentioning Ghost.
Oh, Ghost Jon Snow's direwolf.
Yeah, always at his side, a silent, watchful guardian.
A true companion.
And speaking of Jon Snow, the Starks are known for their honor and their sense of duty, and no one embodies that more than Ned Stark.
Ned Stark, a man who lived and died by his principles.
He did?
Even when those principles led to his downfall.
The things I do for love.
Right, his actions driven by love and the desire to protect his family, but ultimately they result in tragedy.
It's true. It's like this tragic irony.
It is.
He was trying to do the right thing, uphold justice, but in the Game of Thrones.
Even the most honorable players can become victims.
Yeah, you really start to think about the weight of choices.
Hmm.
He believed he was doing the right thing, but the consequences were devastating.
And then there's Robb Stark, Ned's son, who inherits that same strong sense of honor.
Right.
He faces impossible choices as he's thrust into leadership during wartime.
The young wolf.
He was forced to make decisions in the midst of this brutal war, constantly trying to balance his values with the need to protect his people.
It makes you wonder, how far would you go for what you believe in?
Right. Would you compromise your ideals for survival?
Would you stand firm even if it meant dire consequences?
The Starks really make us confront these difficult questions.
They do. And while both Ned and Robb ultimately fall victim to the schemes of their enemies,
Right.
the surviving Stark children, they show incredible resilience.
They do.
They adapt in different ways, which makes their stories all the more fascinating.
Each one takes a unique path, but they're all shaped by the same unforgiving world.
Right, let's take Arya, for example.
Arya, she's a force of nature.
Even as a young girl, she rejects traditional expectations.
I don't like the queen.
Right, it's a small act of defiance, but it speaks volumes
It does.
about her independent spirit, that same spirit that helps her navigate unimaginable hardship later on.
She chooses a path of vengeance, doesn't she?
She does.
Becoming a warrior, learning to survive by her wits and skills in a world that's shown her little mercy.
It's a pretty intense transformation.
It is.
And it's a stark contrast, I guess you could say.
Just Sansa,
to Sansa, yeah.
who starts off so naive and idealistic.
Believing in songs and stories of chivalry.
Right.
She gets a very harsh awakening when she's thrown into the world of court politics in King's Landing.
You know, Cersei Lannister had this chilling observation about Sansa.
Oh, yeah?
She said, it seems almost obscene to squander such sweet innocence on that gargoyle.
Referring to Tyrion Lannister.
Yes, whom Sansa is forced to marry.
That forced marriage, a cruel manipulation by the Lannisters, becomes a turning point for Sansa, doesn't it?
It does. It shatters her naivete and forces her to grow up fast.
You can practically see her innocence crumbling.
With each cruel act she witnesses.
And that forced marriage, it was a calculated move by the Lannisters.
To control the Starks.
Right, it strips away her naivete and forces her to adapt quickly if she wants to survive.
It's remarkable how she learns to navigate this treacherous environment.
He does?
Sansa develops this sharp intelligence,
Yeah.
a keen understanding of courtly dynamics and a cunning she never knew she possessed.
She becomes a master of observation
Learning to read people.
and decipher their motivations.
She may not wield a sword like Arya,
Right.
but she develops her own kind of strength.
Yeah, a quiet strength.
That allows her to play the Game of Thrones on her own terms.
It's true. And it's impossible to talk about the Starks without acknowledging the environment that shapes them.
The North.
The North, yeah, with its long winters, wildling threats.
The looming presence of White Walkers.
Yeah, it's constantly testing their limits. Winter is coming.
It's not just a motto for the Starks, it's a way of life.
It is.
A constant reminder that survival is a hard-fought battle.
And this harsh reality, it shapes their pragmatism.
The resilience.
And this understanding that sacrifice is sometimes necessary.
Think about Jon Snow ranging beyond the wall.
Venturing into the unknown to confront the dangers threatening his people.
Or the fall of Winterfell, their ancestral home.
Which forces the surviving Starks to scatter, each finding their own path to survival.
And of course, Catelyn Stark, their mother.
Her fierce protectiveness, her willingness to do whatever it takes to protect her children, it's a testament to the strength that runs in their bloodline.
Catelyn is a force of nature driven by a mother's love. But as we've seen, even the strongest wills can be broken.
Yeah, the most unyielding spirits tested. And this brings us to, I think, a central conflict in the Stark story.
The struggle to uphold their ideals in a world that so often demands compromise.
Yeah, and forces them to make difficult choices.
It's a struggle that we see play out time and again.
We do, and in our next segment, we'll dive deeper into the individual journeys of these fascinating characters.
Exploring how they navigate loss, betrayal, and the ever-present shadow of winter. Welcome back. You know, as we dig deeper into these individual stories of the Stark children, it becomes clear that the North isn't just a geographical location for them.
It's woven into their very being.
Right. It's like the spirit of the North itself is calling them home,
Yes,
even when they're scattered across Westeros facing their own unique challenges.
exactly.
I think Jon Snow's journey really highlights this pull.
Oh,
He starts off as an outsider at Winterfell, right? Raised as Ned Stark's bastard son, always yearning for a place to belong.
he wants acceptance.
He does, and that yearning leads him to the Night's Watch,
The Wall.
right? He believes he can find purpose there, honor a brotherhood.
Right.
But even at the Wall, his Stark blood calls out to him. He's constantly grappling with this conflict between duty and family.
A tension that seems to run deep in the Stark lineage.
It's true. It's like he's trying to forge his own path separate from the legacy and the expectations that come with the Stark name.
But fate has other plans for him.
Fate always does.
It always does. What's fascinating about Jon's journey is how he embodies this push and pull between his desire for independence and the undeniable call of his heritage.
And his experiences beyond the Wall are particularly telling.
Yeah, it's a symbolic return to his roots, right?
It is.
A confrontation with the wild, untamed heart of the North.
He immerses himself in the world of the wildlings,
He does.
learning their customs, understanding their motivations, even falling in love with Ygritte.
Ygritte.
a fiery, wildling woman who challenges his preconceived notions.
Their relationship is such a powerful example of how love and understanding can transcend cultural barriers.
It
It
is.
forces him to see the world through new eyes, to recognize the humanity in those he once considered enemies.
It's a crucial lesson in empathy and understanding.
Right, something desperately needed in a world so often driven by fear and prejudice.
Would you agree that this experience transforms him?
Oh, absolutely. It shapes him into the leader. He becomes one who can bridge divides and understand the true meaning of sacrifice.
And ultimately, this understanding proves crucial in uniting forces against the true enemy.
The White Walkers.
The White Walkers, a force that threatens to extinguish all life regardless of human squabbles and political boundaries.
It's true. And speaking of extinguishing life, let's shift our focus to Arya's journey.
Ah, Arya.
She's exposed to the darkest side of humanity, right?
She is.
Witnessing her father's execution, enduring countless betrayals, and her reaction to all this trauma,
It's quite different from John's.
very different. She develops a survival instinct unlike any other Stark child, embracing violence, honing her skills as a warrior, becoming a master of disguise and deception.
Remember, Arya starts as a playful, spirited child full of life.
She does.
But her experiences, they strip away her innocence,
They do.
forcing her to confront a world where survival depends on shedding sentimentality and embracing ruthlessness.
Her list of names.
Those she wants to kill.
Right, it's chilling.
It is.
It's a stark reminder of the toll that violence and trauma can take on a young mind. Do you think she loses sight of her humanity altogether?
That's a question that haunts her journey. There's a darkness to her path,
There is.
a thirst for vengeance that can be both terrifying and exhilarating. But even amidst all the darkness, there are glimpses of her Stark heart, a yearning for connection and belonging.
Her bond with her direwolf Nymeria.
Even when they're separated, their connection remains.
It's a beautiful example of that. It represents Arya's tie to her roots, to the wild, untamed part of herself.
A glimmer of hope in an otherwise bleak and brutal journey.
And in contrast to Arya's descent into darkness, Sansa's path takes a different turn.
Sansa, she begins as a dreamer,
Captivated by the beauty and pageantry of the South.
initially blind to the danger lurking beneath the surface,
She's very much a product of the romantic stories and songs she's been raised on.
believing in chivalry and courtly love.
Right, but those romantic notions are quickly shattered.
When she's thrust into the viper's nest of King's Landing,
That's a good way to put it.
her time there is a brutal education in the realities of power,
The manipulations.
the betrayals that fuel the Game of Thrones.
And her forced marriage to Tyrion Lannister.
A man she initially loathes.
Right, it's a major turning point for her.
It is, you can practically see her innocence crumbling.
With each cruel act, she witnesses that forced marriage, a calculated move by the Lannisters to control the Starks. It strips away her naivete.
And forces her to adapt quickly if she wants to survive.
It's truly remarkable how she learns to navigate this treacherous environment.
She does. Sansa develops this sharp intelligence,
Yeah.
a keen understanding of courtly dynamics, and a cunning she never knew she possessed.
She becomes a master of observation, learning to read people and decipher their motivations.
She may not wield a sword like Arya, but she develops her own kind of strength.
Right, a quiet strength that allows her to play the Game of Thrones on her own terms.
Her journey is a testament to the power of adaptability and resilience.
It is.
She's proof that even the most delicate flower can bloom in the face of a storm.
Well said. And finally, we come to Bran, the youngest Stark's son. His journey is perhaps the most mystical of them all.
Deeply tied to the ancient magic of the North.
His fall from the tower, which initially seems like a tragic accident, sets him on a path that will change not only his life, but the fate of Westeros.
His abilities as a warg, allowing him to see through the eyes of summer,
Right.
evolve into something far more profound, the powers of a green seer.
It's like he transcends physical limitations.
He does, embracing a connection to the world that goes beyond human comprehension.
He becomes this bridge between the realms of men and magic, a conduit for the ancient wisdom of the North,
His destiny becomes intertwined with the fate of the world itself.
making him perhaps the most important Stark child of all. So we have Jon grappling with duty and family, facing the existential threat of the White Walkers.
Arya, on a quest for vengeance, embracing the darkness to survive.
Sansa learning to play the Game of Thrones, using her wit to outmaneuver her enemies.
And Bran, embracing his mystical destiny, becoming a vessel for ancient knowledge and power. Each Stark child in their own way embodies the spirit of the North.
Resilient. Deeply connected to the land and its magic. but their paths are fraught with danger, and their choices will have far-reaching consequences. What do you think awaits them? Can they overcome the darkness that threatens to consume them? That's the question that keeps me on the edge of my seat. Can they find their way back to each other, back to the heart of their family? And what role will they play in the ultimate battle for the fate of Westeros? The, those are questions we'll explore in our final segment. So we've talked about their connection to nature, their sense of honor, their resilience, but what does it all mean? What can we learn from the Starks?
Well, we've seen them scattered, broken, forced to adapt to a world that seems determined to crush them, but they always find a way to come back.
They're survivors.
They are like those weirwood trees with roots running deep, able to endure the harshest winters.
It's true, and it's not just about individual survival, right? They're fighting for something bigger,
They are.
for the soul of the North, for the preservation of an ancient way of life.
And that fight becomes intertwined with the fate of Westeros itself.
Jon Snow, for example, he finds himself on the front lines against the White Walkers, right?
He does.
Realizing that the petty squabbles of kingdoms mean nothing when faced with an existential threat to all humanity.
And his time with the wildlings,
Yeah.
his understanding of their culture, his willingness to see beyond prejudice, those were essential experiences.
They shaped him.
They did. They shaped him into the leader. He becomes the embodiment of winter is coming.
It's not just a warning.
It's a call to action, a reminder that survival demands we set aside our differences and face our challenges together.
And then you have Arya, whose journey takes her down a much darker path.
Arya.
This relentless pursuit of vengeance. Her training as a warrior, her descent into a world of shadows, it's a stark reflection of the brutal realities that they all must confront.
It raises questions about the cost of survival,
Yeah.
the compromises we make, the blurring of lines between good and evil.
How trauma and violence can shape us.
Yes, push us to the brink of losing our humanity.
But even in her darkest moments, there are glimpses of her stark heart, right? A refusal to completely succumb to the darkness.
There are.
That connection with Nymeria, her direwolf. It always struck me as a symbol of that wild spirit,
That connection to nature.
that connection to nature, yeah, which can be both destructive and transformative.
A reminder that even in the face of immense suffering, a spark of hope can remain. And speaking of transformation, Sansa's journey is remarkable.
From naive romantic girl to shrewd, calculating player in the Game of Thrones.
It's hard to believe it's the same person.
It is. She endures so much betrayal and manipulation, but she learns to navigate that world.
With surprising cunning.
She really does.
Sure.
She might not wield a sword like Arya, but her words, her understanding of power dynamics, those become her weapons.
Resilience can take many forms.
It can. And then there's Bran, whose journey transcends the physical realm altogether.
He embraces the mystical powers of a green seer.
He becomes a vessel for ancient knowledge, a bridge between past, present, and future.
His connection to the weirwood trees, those silent sentinels of the north, allows him to tap into a vast network of memories, experiences, wisdom.
Like he becomes the collective consciousness of the North itself.
It's a powerful image.
It is. It makes you realize that there are forces at work beyond human comprehension. And that even in the darkest of times, there's a power beyond our understanding that can guide us, protect us, and maybe even restore balance to the world.
The Starks, with all their complexities, their flaws, their strengths, their unwavering spirit, they represent the full spectrum of humanity.
They do.
Their story speaks to the enduring power of family loyalty and our connection to something larger than ourselves.
A reminder that even in a world as harsh and unforgiving as Westeros, even when winter seems to have swallowed all light, there's a flicker of hope that refuses to be extinguished.
And that fight for survival, it resonates with our own struggles, doesn't it?
It does. It does. The Starks teach us about resilience, about staying true to ourselves even in the face of adversity, and about the power of hope, even when all seems lost.
And as you continue your journey through the world of A Song of Ice and Fire, keep the Starks in mind.
Their story is far from over,
It is their ultimate fate remains shrouded in mystery.
but their legacy will endure, their fight for survival will resonate, and their spirit will continue to inspire.
Well said. Until next time, may you find your own strength and resilience just like the Starks of Winterfell.